days. So tell us about your style.
Well, the style was developed in concert with our, just pre-production of this show, that the questions that we were asking, what we wanted this show to be. Now, Wondery had a great success with another history podcast called Tides of History that is done by Patrick Wyman, an actual historian. And that was kind of the entree to the idea of telling a story in an immersive and narrative format. And we took it further, I suppose. We wanted to increase the sound design. We wanted to increase the dramatic moments and really bring a listener close. So that was our mission, and I hope we've achieved it. But as for how we decide what stories to tell or where we're going next, a lot of that is collaborative in Wondery and in their efforts to find historians and storytellers who can help us bring these things to light. As far as American Revolution, it was kind of a no-brainer. We needed to get this one out on or before July 4th.
Absolutely. And we're going to jump into that here in just a bit. But before we do that, I know you are a Dallas guy. Your company's based here, and you had spent some time in the SMU administration doing some digital communications work. I believe you got your MBA at SMU. And so when I learned you were an SMU grad and member of the administration, as a big SMU fan, graduate myself, my co-host Shawn's a big fan. My mind was kind of blown that my favorite podcast host was also a good Mustang. So can you tell me a little bit about your time? How did you come to SMU?
Well, it actually was a long time ago. I started working at SMU January 2nd, 2002. So I started in development, so their fundraising department. At the time, Brad Shees was not there, but he came, or had been previously, then went away, then came back. Anyways, it was a long time.
Right, went to Pepperdine and came back, right.
So no, I grew up in development for SMU pretty much, and stayed there for 10 years, eventually becoming the director of business intelligence and market research. So analytical marketing for them, trying to figure out audiences and how best we can approach people in direct marketing and mass market media to tell the SMU story. Then I left for about 5 years and worked on a number of things. Worked for an insurance company, worked for myself, starting an audio company. And then actually about a year ago, I returned to SMU, back to development, and became the director of direct marketing there. That was a good time. I mean, I walked in knowing a lot about the institution and its mission. That certainly hasn't changed, but some of the people did, and had a great time. But lucky for me, I think I was able to start this podcast with Wondery, and we have a few other surprises in store, in the coming months.
You've made it. Well, I can certainly tell you that your direct marketing and digital marketing worked on at least one of the hosts, yours truly, because I have sent back plenty of my hard-earned dollars back to SMU. So congratulations and for your part in their big $1 billion campaign. And so, Lindsay, this is great. We're going to take a quick break. If you'll stick with us for another quick segment, I want to jump into the Revolutionary War series that has just come out this week. Stick with us. This is Deconstructing Dallas. Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. We'll see you after the break. Deconstructing Dallas, Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. We are joined today by the great Lindsay Graham, of course, of Wondery's American History Tellers fame. Lindsay, thank you again for coming on, and it's a big week for you, the week before July 4th, and you have launched the first of a 6-part series on the Revolutionary War.
Sure.
I know that you had many listener requests for this topic. Can you describe what the early feedback is? What was the feedback when you were getting ready for this topic, and how did you decide on just how to approach the subject?
Well, the feedback from the very beginning has been really warm, heartening, and enormous. So we get a lot of listeners who approach us on social media or on the survey that you can take on the Wondery's website. And we get a lot of suggestions of what to tackle next. The American Revolution was far and away one of the favorites, and for good reason. It's the birth of our country, and this is a show called American History Tellers, so it makes perfect sense. But how we wanted to approach it, that took some thinking, because we know that this story, of all American stories, is probably very well known and told over and over again. We know the times, the places, the series of events, and certainly the people. So we wanted to do something a little different. And it turns out that there's a historian, a writer, Russell Shorto, who also did very much the same thing. In his book, Revolution Song, he followed the lives of individual people, sort of in a narrative chronology, telling the story of the revolution, but through the eyes of the everyman, or those persons that you wouldn't have expected to view the series of events from. Like, we start with George Washington, that's an obvious one, but episode 2 leaps across the Atlantic to the British side, and we hear the revolution told through the perspective of General George Germain, who was the military and British political leader behind the war. In subsequent episodes, we'll hear about the Native American viewpoint from Corn Planter and Iroquois, a woman, a slave, a Scottish immigrant. So these are the stories of the people who really lived it. Of course, there were 10, 20, 40 founding fathers, but there were thousands, tens of thousands more of just ordinary Americans trying to live a life.
Very exciting stuff, and the first episode I've already jumped in. I'm through it, and you open with a tomahawk splitting a Frenchman's cranium. So very vivid imagery, Lindsay, and I'm completely hooked. I can't wait for episode 2. It sounds like this is a different way of experiencing the revolution. So what a treat for all of us. And what can we expect? How are you going to outdo the Revolutionary War series? There's been a build up to this. What's next?
I actually don't know what's next. We have lots of ideas and lots of things in the pot right now being stirred around. I do know that we have a series on national parks, which at first sounds rather not exciting, especially if it came after the Revolution, a war, But in fact, there are a lot of politics, a lot of conflict, and some very big characters who took just these tracts of land and saved them for the American public. So I'm actually excited about that. We'll hear about the history of Hawaii, the history of Texas. We'll hear about the gold rush. We'll hear about the American frontier. We have 250 odd years of American history to explore, and I'm really excited to keep going.
That's great. You said, I was hoping you would say the history of Texas, as somebody who spent about a decade working in the legislature and in the Capitol, and having been to Sam Houston's gravesite and actually held the letter from Jackson to Houston. I was really hoping, selfishly, that you would do a series on Texas. So there's some fan feedback for you. You can log that however you like, but that's great. Last couple questions for you here, Lindsay. I'm also a big fan of Business Wars and your colleague David Brown, and I know that you two just completed we'll call it a Business Wars History Tellers crossover series on Hearst versus Pulitzer. What was it like working with David? How did that collaboration work out?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. David's another Texan. He lives in Austin. And you may hear him as the voice of Texas Standard on KRA. So I actually didn't, unfortunately, get to meet him. We did the same thing that we're kind of doing right here. We just worked remotely, he in his studio and me in mine. But he's a friendly and funny and sometimes outrageous guy. So it was good to work with him. We threw lines back and forth, and out came this crossover series that I thought was really entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely, really fun. You know, it's the headless torso and some of the history of yellow journalism, let's call it. It was really fun to listen to, and David's a real talent like you, and so that was really fun for all of us fans. Lindsay, last thing for you. We always like to give our guests the opportunity to guide our listeners. Tell them where they can find you to listen to History Tellers, or if they want to start their own podcast or have you produce a podcast, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me in American History Tellers probably fastest on their phone. If you've got an iPhone, there's a podcast app. You just search American History Tellers. Google has actually just come out with their new podcast app, so we'll be all over that too. A good web search for American History Tellers will find me. Coming up, we have actually at the end of August a completely new podcast series called American Scandal coming out. So it takes kind of the formula of American History Tellers and recasts it and takes a more pointed and critical look at some of the more wayward and salacious moments of American history. So I'm very excited about that, and it's keeping me busy. You can find all of that and probably much more at Wondery.com. Wondery is the podcast network that I work with, and they're just great people.
Lindsay, that's great. It's been a real treat to have you on today. Thank you. Glad to know that Dallas guy is making so many big waves with his podcast. So thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing the rest of the Revolutionary War series and American Scandal and whatever comes after that. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Deconstructing Dallas. We'll be back after this.
Hey, this is Shawn. You know, this week I finally made it to an appointment I've been putting off. That's right, I visited my dentist. I have to admit I was a couple of months behind on my cleaning, and I just knew that I was in for a beatdown. But alas, both my dentist and my hygienist gave me major props on my chops. They said that they could tell I've been brushing, and both my teeth and my gums were in great shape. I let them know I had started using Buck Brush, the superior electric toothbrush that delivers the quality of a $150 toothbrush, but for only $35. My dentist said that he also switched to an electric toothbrush, and he's all in just like me. Like I've said before, Buck Brush does not try to rip you off by charging you $15 for every replacement brush head. For only $1 a month, you will be brushing fresh all year. Buck Brush vibrates strong enough to make a difference in your brushing, and the vibrations act as a timer as well. Stop spending hundreds on your electric toothbrush and set yourself up for a great dentist visit just like I had this week. Visit buckbrushco.com to get started. That's buckbrushco.com. Join the revolution and let's vibe together. We are back, Deconstructing Dallas. Sean Williams, Ryan Trimble. Man, that was a great conversation, especially coming up on the 4th of July as we are right now. That was a wonderful time to hear from Lindsay Graham about the American Revolution.
Yeah, I was so excited. After the call, I told him just how excited I was to have him on, and so he kind of laughed and said, well, you guys keep it up and stay podcasting. So, good encouragement from Lindsay Graham. So I'll encourage our listeners to go check out his podcast. Again, it's American History Tellers. And Shawn,
by Wondery.
By Wondery, that's correct. Shawn, one sports note, will you be rushing out to get a LeBron Lakers jersey in the next couple days?
I can say that I will not. I will never be caught in a Lakers jersey. And that's going to be a tough one to try to root for LeBron. I'm excited. Well, to root for LeBron with the Lakers. Let me say that. That's just my brain has